what we saw with this set was a freak generational rookie class. So I would say for people, temper expectations, but get excited about it.
What's up, Candy fam? My name is Nate, that's Shadsman, and today on Talking Candy, we've got a special edition for the Uncut Diamonds set. As you may know, the 2022 Uncut Diamonds are around the corner. We don't have an official drop date yet, but the 2021 Uncut Diamonds were one of the origin drops a year ago. And as some of you may know from Discord, Shads is a diehard prospect follower. He loves to prospect and pay attention to the up and coming players as well as the young rookies. He's got the Twitter account at MLB Uncut Daily. Give that a follow if it's something that you like to pay attention to. Lots of good updates on how those players are doing. But yeah, we're gonna jump into some predictions. We're gonna take a quick look at how some of last year's Uncut Diamonds are doing. But Shads, I appreciate you being here. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Excited to be here. Excited to
Sweet.
talk prospects. I love it.
Love
We're
it.
pumped for the new set.
So we are going to start with a quick review of the 2021 Uncut Diamonds, and as you know, or maybe you don't, there were 30 different Uncut Diamond players, one from each of the 30 MLB teams, and the premise was that it's the top prospect from each team that was up for debate. They got most of them right. I'm not a diehard prospector, so I have very much enjoyed talking with you about different things. So why don't we start by just kind of jumping into not every player on the original set, but kind of walking through who the top performers are. Some of them were obvious, as well as a couple lists of who the biggest busts were and some of the biggest surprises. So let's start with just kind of the top of that list of who were the biggest performers from that origin Uncut Diamond set.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, at the top of the list is pretty obvious, right? J-Rod was an absolute stud the whole year. He came up and he started off a little bit slow. He stole bases at a clip that I think was a little bit higher than people thought, but the homers didn't come early, and then when the homers came, everything else came, and the Mariners went with him. So, I mean, I think him to start, he was a superstar. And I mean, even next year for the fantasy baseball people, J-Rod is looking like a top five, top 10 fantasy player going into the season. So in redraft leagues. So, I mean, he's got everything you want. Um, Second, for me, I would put it's close between two guys, but for second, for me, I would have Adley. Um, Adley in Baltimore, since he came up, he totally changed the complexion of the team in the Orioles. A switch hitting catcher who's crushing it. He's third in on base percentage since he's come up, which is insane. In the second half, I think the only player who eclipsed him in on base percentage was Judge. So I mean, what he's done since he's come up, hitting second for the Orioles, has been super impressive. Especially because catchers usually come up and struggle, and
Yep.
he's just been totally impervious to that, which has been insane. Um, right behind him, Bobby Witt. He's the second. So this year there were five, or there's been five ever, uh, 25, 25, 25 homer, 25 steal rookies in the history of the game, and two of them were this year, J-Rod and Bobby Witt. So I mean, Bobby Witt is I think he's getting overshadowed by J-Rod. If J-Rod wasn't a rookie this year, if you didn't have so many guys getting the call from the jump this year, um, it would be big time. He'd be big time up there. So he's obviously a big one. One that I think flew under the radar a little bit, not so much because he got the hype middle of the year, was Nolan Gorman. So Nolan Gorman, he was on no one's radar to start the year. He was a second baseman. He was a former third baseman, first baseman who was learning second base, and you knew the offense would kind of come, but you didn't really know to what degree. And he just started raking from the start of the year, forced the Cardinals' hand, coupled with some injuries in the middle infield for the Cardinals. But he got a break, and then he's been homering like crazy. The strikeouts are still there, so he's got to work on that. And that'll always be a little bit of a concern. But overall, I would say he was one of the top performers this year. If you owned his uncut diamond, you definitely saw that appreciate in value over the course of the year, from where you started to sort of where you ended up. And then the last one in top performances for me, the only one on the pitching side, luckily he's holding up the pitchers in the set a little bit, is Nick Lodolo. So he ended the year, I think, with a something around like a 3.6 ERA, in 100 innings. I think he had like 130 Ks, 131 Ks, low walks. You saw sort of a lot of the pinpoint control that you had seen in the minors with him. So he was fantastic. He had some injury problems. He had some back issues in the middle of the year, but over the course of the entire season, he's definitely up there for me for top performers for 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
those last two are important to note. Those are two that would barely even be on my radar if it weren't for conversations that you and I have had. So I think those are two really important ones. And I definitely agree with you on the Adley and the Witt. They both had really impressive seasons as rookies. Julio was just a cut above the rest, but Adley struggled for a little bit when he first came up, and then started to get that bat tool working. So it's been fun watching those guys. It's fun to have those, all three of them between Julio, Adley, and Witt. They were all so highly touted, and they all really kind of made their mark right away. And it's cool when it works out that way because it doesn't always happen.
Never happens. Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, for what they were supposed to be, for them to live up to sort of what everyone thought
Hmm.
is insanely impressive. I mean, it's crazy because it could have easily gone the other way, where guys get the call from the jump, and then and we'll talk about that in some of the busts, but there are some guys that get the call from the jump and it just doesn't work out. So for them to live up to those expectations, it's cool to see and
For,
good for us
yeah,
who collect.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, for
Um, so, all right. So before we get to the biggest surprises, let's talk about those busts. Who were some of those guys that looked like they were going to get that opportunity to show their stuff that just didn't quite pan out?
Yeah, so guys can be in this list for a couple different reasons, and you'll see as we go through the list. But number one, I want to kind of start out with a guy who got the opportunity and just it just didn't work out, and that's Spencer Torkelson for the Tigers. So Torkelson, 100%. You saw it coming in. He had everything from a pedigree standpoint. He had the power. He had the on-base profile. He had opposite field power as a big righty bat. He had a top five, or top two draft pick. And then you have the fact that the Tigers are passing on first base, literally giving him Miguel Cabrera's first base glove, passing him the job to be their next first baseman, and it just never he never came around. He had a slow start that a lot of these other prospects did. It just continued, whether it's a mental thing and it got to him eventually. It just didn't work out. He ended up going back down to AAA Toledo. Um, did okay there. They called him back up at the end of the year, maybe just for a reset thing. But I mean, him going forward, he's one in this set that you'd have to wonder about going forward how he's going to perform. 100%. Next one, that was mainly performance. The next one, performance coupled with injury, is Brennan Davis from the Cubs organization. He spent most of his year in AAA Iowa. He was a guy from a power perspective that the Cubs were kind of almost expecting to start the year with them. He didn't hit that way in spring training. Then he started the year striking out like crazy. Then he had a debilitating back injury where he was out for multiple months, and he just came back now, and he's sort of starting to hit a little bit and get back into a groove. But it's just too late. You lost the season. And I mean, for guys in the minor leagues, it's really tough to come back from that where you lose a whole season. Your whole developmental curve is totally thrown off. Now you get a guy who is a first round pick and a top 25 prospect, and you take a year like that. Next year he'll probably be in the high 70s, low 80s as far as a prospect ranking, if he even is up there at all, just from a power perspective, if they choose to invest in there. But there's not much now to like about Davis, unfortunately, besides the power potential, which is always there. But now it's there with tons of guys, so you don't know. Um, Next on the list, we'll go to the pitchers. This was a guy who actually threw a lot from a volume perspective, but Cade Cavalli just roller coaster year. He was supposed to be the best arm in the set. and there just wasn't a lot really to write home about. With every good start, there were two bad starts, and it culminated itself with his major league debut where he got rocked for 7 runs in 4 1/3 innings, and then that was his only stint, and then he got shut down for the rest of the year. So he's one too. Obviously, the Nationals will spend time on him, but you got to wonder what he really will look like in the next couple of years. Then the next one is kind of half and half. I was hesitant to put it on this list even. But the last one from an injury perspective is just Royce Lewis. Just because you hate to see an injury guy who it was always the hurdle of can he get over the injuries. He has a really great start to the year at AAA and hits doubles like crazy, gets called up to the Twins, starts doing the same thing, and then runs into the wall in center field, and now he's out here, and now he'll be rehabbing to start next year again. So same thing, it's that developmental curve, that same topic. Anytime that you get a guy who's thrown off his developmental curve, it's tough. So
Makes
I mean,
sense.
that's it from a bus perspective. But all three of those guys, or four of those guys, not great years.
Where would you put CJ Abrams in that conversation?
Yeah, CJ, he was one that I was going back and forth on. He got moved around a lot,
Hmm.
whether it was on the Padres, getting moved from short to second to center field, then getting moved from major leagues. He broke with spring training with the club. It didn't really work out. He got sent back down pretty early. Then he got traded to the Nationals. So now, then he came up there and is kind of performing a little bit, but you just don't know. He's just so raw, and the Padres gave him a chance so early that I still think I would be hesitant to call his season a bust.
Hmm.
From where he started and where you valued him, if you went in on CJ Abrams, from a collecting perspective, you could definitely call him a bust because you expected more than this from him this year. You
That's a
expect
good
him
way
to,
to frame it. That's a good way to frame it because there was
yeah.
that CJ Abrams like pandemonium at the beginning of the year where everybody was freaking out. He hit his first home run, the play of the day, all that. There was a lot of hype around it.
Oh, totally. He was one of those upper tier guys, and he didn't end the year there. So you could definitely put him in that group.
Yeah. So it makes sense. Bust from if you invested in the timeline of his hype this year, but in terms of the potential of what he could be next year, sounds like you're not necessarily putting him in the same category as some of these other guys where, he's still getting opportunity. He could figure some things out to start next year. So
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah, I
see.
would I would totally agree. Yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys I would not he's out of all those guys in that list, I would not be shocked if he was hitting top two for the Nationals and put it together, like starting next season. But all those other guys I put there because I'm a little bit worried going forward about
So buy low opportunity on Abrams right now,
it.
if you're
100%.
into
Get
that
in.
sort of thing. So let's knock off the last list here before we jump into the 22 predictions. But talk to me about some of the biggest surprises.
Yeah, this one and these three are fun, super, super fun. Number one is the late night bandit, Shea Langeliers. The only reason why I call him that is because every single time after I went to bed and did the scorecard, he would homer, and I had to get up at like 2 a.m. and tweet about it or retweet it or whatever. But Shea Langeliers crushed it. Started the set as the Braves representative. Got dealt to the A's,
Hmm.
and then has been fantastic. He had a great year at AAA. Kind of going between. He's still catching a lot, but hitting is his big piece, obviously, to his development, or to his staying power in the major leagues. But he's been great at AAA, power like crazy, and also getting on base. And this is a consistent theme with a lot of guys now in development. The next thing that they ask them after power is, okay, you got the power. Now we need to see you get on base. We need to see you have consistently good at bats, and we need to see you face guys 2 and 3 times through the same league to see how they attack you and see how you adjust. And that was a big one with Langeliers. He went through tons of slumps over the course of the year, but he just pushed through it, and had a great year and ended up with Oakland. And Oakland has two guys on this list, which is great for them. The second guy on this list for them is Tyler Soderstrom. who was their initial representative when we first did it. And he's on this representative as a catcher. I don't think he ends up there. He catches now from time to time. He sort of splits, but I think we'll see that eventually almost exclusively go to first base. But he is a guy who, over multiple levels, just kept hitting. He got really hot in the second half, and he got really hot as he was brought up to a double A. But his power numbers are crazy. In the minor leagues, he was one of, I think, 10 guys who had over 100 ribbies for the entire minor league season. So he's been a run producer at multiple levels for the A's, and he's progressing nicely. He was one of the younger prospects in the set to begin with, and he was a nice surprise. He was one of those guys. I mean, you'll see it consistently with this list: Langliers, Soderstrom, and then the last guy I'm going to mention right here is JJ Bleday. All three of those guys, when they initially started the set, they were three of the five cheapest guys, I would say, to buy on the open market. And for them to put up seasons like this, in Langlier's case and in Bleday's case, where they're both reaching the major leagues, like that's a pretty nice surprise. If
Hmm.
you got a JJ Bleday card and you got to see him debut in the major leagues this year, that was a pretty nice surprise. So same thing, just one last piece on Bleday. Great on base numbers at AAA. He did it in the major leagues. He did it. He hit 230 at AAA, and it was enough to get him a debut in the bigs because he does everything else well. Like the batting average is not his thing, but he gets on base, he shows power, and he hits doubles. When he hits the ball, he hits it hard. So I mean, that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, I remember, shout out to Devin when we did our little preview of the 21 Uncut Diamonds at the beginning of the year. He spotted JJ Bleday as a potential sleeper, so it was cool to see that pan out to some extent. But one question I have for you on those guys, or I should say on, well, yeah, on all three of them. Have you noticed their stock rising in terms of their card values, similar to maybe a Gorman or a Lodolo, or are those guys that are flying under the radar with the current user base?
Yeah, I think still. Um, I think still a little flying low. I mean, you definitely saw it with Gorman.
Yeah.
Gorman was the one that comes to mind that you really saw the movement with him. Not so much. You did with Langoliers, but when you saw it is you saw it super early when he kept homering.
Hmm.
In AAA. I think people who kind of wanted to get in on him did there. Soderstrom totally not. No, I've seen no movement in his whatsoever. If any, it's downward, which I don't really get. I think it's just because guys who are farther away. You
Hmm.
see a guy and you're like, okay, he's high A and double A, so you're gonna have to wait like at least a year for him to see him, which people don't want to do. But no, I would say with Langoliers and Blade, definitely there's still a chance there. Those are still low.
Very cool. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go into the the 2022 stuff. So we were gonna break this out into four tiers, and basically, I'm gonna tee up each tier for you, kind of break down which teams we're about to talk about, and then you can go through that list however you see fit. So the first tier, is we've got a group of 8 guys here coming from Arizona, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Colorado, Milwaukee, New York Yankees, St. Louis, and the Texas Rangers. So give me an idea. I don't know if you want to walk through them one by one or however you want
Sweet.
to do it. It's up to you. But give me an idea of why you put this first bucket all together as one.
Right. Yeah. So for the first bucket, this is kind of like the top tier, and I guess I want to preface these rankings with sort of explaining how we went through it. So one thing that I think is critical in this is how we selected who would potentially be selected, and there's a couple of things for that. One main piece is um, from Uzman, we had heard way back. I had confirmed that a big deciding factor in who gets selected are the Futures Game roster invitees.
Mm.
So that's a big piece. So one, it will be. were they invited to the futures game? The second piece will be if their representative for that team has been traded or that player is injured or he's been called up after that, then there's nowhere else to go but to go with a highly ranked prospect or a prospect, even a prospect that I just personally like.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so either way, that's sort of how we decided it. Another piece is for guys that were called up late, um, but September call-ups, I don't know. I'm just going to assume that Candy is not going to include those guys. So the guys that are included in that, which really, really sucks, are guys like for the D-backs, Corbin Carroll, like everyone wants to see. From Baltimore, Gunnar Henderson, that everyone wants to see. There are some other guys from, I'm trying to think, there's a representative that I put in here on the top tier. From the Astros, Hunter Brown. He's debuted, but same thing. We're gonna kind of play it by ear based on whatever we think Candy thinks. So that's the link. That's the short Reader's Digest version of that, I guess. But going through the top tier, number one at the top tier, starting with the D-backs, I'll start with Jordan Lawler. You can't pick Corbin Carroll, right? He's already debuted. So Jordan Lawler in I think the 2020 draft class. He has crazy, crazy, crazy tools. So he was a high school draftee, and he struggled a bit in a small sample size at Double A, but he still showed crazy power. He's one of those guys, top 10, top 15 overall prospects. So he's up in that top tier. The next team, Baltimore Orioles. Again, can't pick Gunnar Henderson. So my representative for them that I'm looking for is Grayson Rodriguez. There was really no star power last year in the set, in my opinion, on the pitcher side. I'm really excited for them to potentially take Grayson Rodriguez. He has insane, insane stuff. He's what you read about. Upper 90s fastball, slider is is upper 80s, but same thing. You have the same shape that all those guys do. DeGrom, like, all the hard throws. DeGrom previously, Syndergaard. But the thing that makes Grayson Rodriguez great is his changeup is probably the best secondary pitch in all of minor leagues. So Grayson Rodriguez, I really, really hope that he's a pick. He was not a futures game roster invitee, so he would be a kind of off the board selection. But their futures game invitee was Gunnar Henderson, who got called up. So I'm hoping they kind of just replace that. Cincinnati, Ellie De La Cruz had a crazy year, hit 28 homers. Um, the only thing is his strikeout numbers are absolutely insane, like borderline potentially unsustainable. So he's one of those guys. Is he like a Gorman type where the strikeouts can work and you can do it? Or is it just too much where it just consumes them? But crazy righty bat, shortstop, third base type prospect. Could grow into a third base. That's kind of what they do it with. But his athleticism is off the charts, and his power is crazy. Then Colorado, Zach Veen, super speedy outfielder. There's no other representatives from Colorado. He was the Futures Game selection. He's their top prospect, best overall prospect, speed for days. Don't quote me on this. I think he literally stole like 60 bases this year
Damn.
or more. I'm pretty sure. So he's a natural selection. Same with the Brewers. The Brewers and Jackson Chourio. Uh, he actually had a slow end of the year, but he's so toolsy that he's everyone's hot name.
Mm.
So Jackson Chourio, if you're looking for kind of the next like hot name potential wise in overall tier one, it's definitely him. Yankees fans are going to want Anthony Volpe, and they should. He had a little bit of a down year this year, but he's still on that same path. So I have for the Yankees, I have Anthony Volpe as their selection. There's not really many other clear selections there. He's the natural one, and I think people last year were waiting for him this year. Obviously, they wanted Dominguez, but they want both.
Hmm.
Then possibly my favorite of the whole set is Cardinals Jordan Walker. He's enormous. He's 6'5", 220. His power numbers are crazy. Um, you just there are certain programs or certain organizations that you love getting prospects from, and hitters. There's just something about hitters from the Cardinals, right? Like there's just something about pitchers on the Rays, or there's something about pitchers on the Braves, or right now with the way they're going, hitters on the Braves, and that just makes Jordan Walker and what he could potentially do with the Cardinals super exciting. Then honestly, this is not performance based tier one. This is clearly name based. My next one, and this is the last one in tier one that I have, um, is Jack Leiter from the Rangers, and that's just name. He was their futures game representative. It was not performance based. It was 100% hype and name based. He did not have a good season this year. He did not. But the stuff there is crazy, and you're just kind of hoping that as he gets acclimated, and they may be working on some things mechanically, that Jack Leiter can kind of get back there. But Jack Leiter, for those who aren't aware, Vanderbilt arm, who they took top two. Uh, Last year in last year's draft. And they paired him with Kumar Rocker, who they took this year. So that'll be exciting. Vanderbilt Arms in Texas, I guess.
Love it. That Lighter was definitely the name that stood off the page for me in terms of a name that I knew. As I've stated, this is not my area of expertise, so I'm very much enjoying walking through this all with you. So yeah, so let's jump into the second tier here, which again is going to be, actually this one's a list of 7 guys. So we've got Boston, Houston, Miami, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Toronto, and Washington on this list. And it looks like everybody on this list was the Futures Game representative for their team. So let's walk through this list and give me an idea about why these guys are just that one step down from the first tier.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Thanks for checking me on that. I forgot to mention in tier one, everyone was a Futures Game invitee except for Grayson Rodriguez. He was the only one. So that's a good point. So this year or in this tier, they're all Futures Game invitees. The first one for Boston, Cedane Rafaela, he came out of nowhere. A bunch of people, I'm sure, and rightfully so, want Marcelo Meyer to be in this set. I think with some guys, Candy gives them a year, knowing that Meyer's probably not going to be in the major leagues in 2023, so they can use him as a headliner in the 2023 Uncut Diamond set. But back to Rafaela, crazy tools. He's another toolsy guy, another toolsy outfielder. In Boston, they've made all kinds of comparisons to all kinds of outfielders in Boston with what he has going on. But he was the Futures Game invitee, and also too he was a big riser. So it'll be interesting to see where he hits in some of these prospect rankings, because there are some scouts that love him. There are some scouts that think he's okay, but he's a 30-30 type guy as an outfielder. Hunter Brown.
Before we step forward there, I think that's an interesting conversation. The Marcelo Meyer conversation, the Gunnar Henderson conversation. It's going to be really intriguing to see what Candy lays out as their parameters for picking these guys. And I'm sure that we will have a follow-up episode of this where we go through the list of the 30 guys that they pick and kind of analyze what their system was for doing that. Because a guy like Meyer, who is such a big name, one of the only other names I know on there, and probably a factor of being a Boston fan, but he was obviously a top pick, and it's you can make an argument for, even though he's not going to be in the majors in theory for a couple of years, that you give people more time to make a play on him, invest in him, have him be part of the ecosystem, and whether it's Meyer or somebody else. It also brings in the factor of, on the back end, if they are limiting themselves to guys that haven't gotten called up, you have a guy like Henderson that you miss out on. Now, that's a bad example because Adley was always going to be the Baltimore representative for that first set. But, it's going to be really cool to see how Candy determines they want this set to be formatted each year. And Is it going to continue to be one guy from each team? Will we eventually bump up to two or three guys when we have the user base to support it? I think that right now, one is a good way to go, having it be this really small 30 card set. But at the same time, there's obviously always going to be teams that have more prospects. And if you're picking one from each year with specific parameters as to why those guys can get picked, you're going to see as time goes on, certain players will be missed and they just won't even have the ability to be part of these sets. So there's a lot of interesting different angles that have to be considered, and I just thought that that was it was an intriguing one. I don't know if you have any
No.
thoughts on that, but
No, I mean that's a great point, right? I mean, I guess it's on Candy's part. It's at what point do you want to lock in sort of capitalizing on someone's hype, right? Because I mean, Meyer right now, he's hyped like crazy. You could say the same thing about Marco Luciano from the Giants. Last year, he was hyped like crazy. This year, he has some injuries, doesn't do too much, doesn't really even move up a level. And I'll bet you if you did him on in this year's set as opposed to last year's set, you wouldn't get anywhere near the sort of hype or market demand that you did previously. So that's a good question. And now we'll have two sets,
mm-hmm.
right? We'll have two sets to sort of compare and be like, all right, these are the guys who are in the set, these are the guys who didn't make the cut. You can definitely draw a line as to what the guidelines are for who's going to get in and who can't get in now.
And
So
was
it should be
do you know was there a single player in last year's set that had logged any time in the MLB?
no,
There was not a single guy.
no,
Interesting. So
no, no
that's a
one,
really interesting note to
no
keep.
one in last year's set had appeared in the MLB previously.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good to know. A little sidebar. Let's
And two, they also didn't include any MLB videos.
mm,
So all the videos are MILB or spring training. So
good
there were
point.
guys who appeared in spring training, but
Right.
not in the actual MLB.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll continue this conversation in another episode, but let's jump into Houston here.
Yeah. Okay. So Houston. So Houston, Hunter Brown. You guys probably saw him. So he just got called up. We did this list a little while ago, but Hunter Brown was called up to replace Verlander when Verlander went down. So same thing. I'm not sure how Candy's going to play this. He was the Astros representative in the futures game. The only thing is he is probably the only. And I say this nicely. I know there's one on the Discord. I forget his name right now, or Duckanism or whatever it is. I'm sorry to Astros fans. Hunter Brown is going to be the only prospect that you will want a card of. There will be no one else that you want an uncut diamond of than Hunter Brown. His stuff's insane. Velocity, fastball velocity, upper 90s. Same thing. He has that wipeout slider that all the righties have now. Good stuff. Hunter Brown, representative from the Astros. Miami, the Marlins, Yuri Perez, futures game invitee as well. Super long, super lanky righty, crazy velocity. It seems like that's what they're building in Miami now between Edward Cabrera, Sandy, him. They're gonna be really scary on the pitching side. They are now, but they're gonna get even more so there. But tall righty, um, crazy velocity, strikeout numbers off the charts. He's probably a little bit further away, but I mean, he could be up mid next year. I would think. The only thing with the Marlins is, do they have a complete logjam from a starting pitching perspective? So don't really know there. Um, with the Pirates, I know our Pirates guys. We got to give them a shout out. Henry Davis, fantastic representative. They have some representatives there as well who were not future game invitees to look for in the future. One is Quinn Priester as the right-handed pitcher if he doesn't make it to the major leagues first. So he was one who was close on in this, but he was not the futures game representative. I was trying to get some more pitchers on this list. It's really tough. I know people don't like pitchers, so that's probably not uh, just completely crippling to some people. But Henry Davis was a super high draft pick. I think top three. He might have came out of Louisville, but don't check me on that. But catcher from the Pirates, great power numbers, strictly a right-handed hitter, which is fine. You don't have to be a switch hitting Adley Rutschman. Now you can just be just a normal, good opposite field power contact right-handed hitter. So Henry Davis is a good one, and he'll be a good one in this set. He'll be one who I think could be low from a pricing perspective, but could surprise some people going forward. Another one, futures game. He had a big futures game. Emerson Hancock from the Mariners. I know no one else in the AL West wants to hear any more pitchers going to Seattle, but that's likely what's going to happen. Emerson Hancock has real nice velocity, a real nice changeup, right-handed pitcher. He should pair nicely with Kirby and Gilbert, and I know Castillo, obviously, who's locked up. So he's their representative. Not really many other representatives there or candidates for the Mariners, so that's one. Then for Toronto, Ricky Tiedemann. He was a nuclear prospect. He probably has the craziest trajectory of anyone. You ask anyone about this guy, no one knew who he was 8 months ago. Absolutely no one.
Hmm.
His year has been insane. He started at high A. Um, his strikeout numbers were just berserk. He's a lefty. He's had insane command. He was same thing. There's gonna be a lot of stuff please don't check me on, but he was either a JUCO or a community college arm, something like that, and someone took a chance on him and he gained like 7 miles per hour of
Wow.
velocity or something, and now he sits like 96, 97. So he's the futures game invitee for the Blue Jays and should be an obvious choice. One of the better pitchers in the set. Also, too, maybe one of the longer holds in the set. So if you're in on him, be prepared for that. Because there's a little bit there from a pitching perspective that he needs to be fine-tuned. So that would be the Blue Jays representative. And then last for the Nationals is Robert Hassel, who they got in the CJ Abrams trade. So he was actually a futures game invitee for the Padres.
Mm.
But I'm guessing that counts. So I don't know.
Can't
But
hurt.
so
It
I'm
can't hurt.
yeah, I can't hurt, right? So he's our representative for the Nationals. He was a very high draft pick. He was a high school bat, was one of those committed guys who it took like a $3 million signing bonus to get into the organization. One of those kind of draft pool bonus manipulation deals. So he was one that the Padres loved, but for some reason they put him in every single trade offer known to man, in every rumor. No clue why. But outfielder, good power, lefty bat, and should get a chance, I would think, pretty quick in Washington to get some at bats. At least you would hope. So
Sweet. All right. So that rounds out tier two. So that leaves us with the last two tiers here, 3 and 4. We'll move through these a little bit quicker, but still feel free to linger on any guy that you think has a specific note that you want to speak on. So we've got 7 more guys here in tier 3 coming from the Chicago White Sox, Cleveland, LA Dodgers, Minnesota, Philly, San Francisco, and Tampa Bay.
all right. Yeah, these ones I'm probably gonna be quicker. Um, some of these decisions were tough. So there were 3 in here that were not futures game invitees, and I'll touch on why we didn't pick anyone from those teams as we go. But first one for the White Sox, Oscar Colas. I think he's the one that I probably feel the best about, to be honest, in this tier. He just had a really, really good, solid season. He was never really a highly touted prospect prior years, but he had a good year this year. Was the Futures Game invitee, was invited there, and I would think that Colson Montgomery is a shortstop who the White Sox took highly last year. I think he's too young to be in the set, and with Colas being the invitee for the futures game, I think it's going to be him. But I think Colson is a better prospect, but I think it will be Colas. Sorry, Montgomery. So I don't want to use
Yeah,
Colon and
yeah.
Colson and Colas. So Montgomery is the better prospect shortstop, but I think it's going to be Colas. Um, then going down to the Indians, Daniel
The
Espino.
Guardians, the Guardians.
Oh, I can't say it anymore. Sorry. I've been doing that for years. Doing
I
that.
saw it on a broad. There was
I'm
on a
probably gonna do it.
broadcast the other day. They got it wrong. I don't know if it was ESPN or what, but
Really?
it said the Rays versus the Indians, Game 3.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh
Sorry.
man,
Go
yeah.
on. Go on.
That's gonna catch me up for a while
Yeah,
probably.
for sure.
Um, all right, so Daniel Espino, crazy electric righty. Not the futures game invitee. The only reason why I did not have one is because all of theirs were off the reservation. Like they're not even of consideration to someone that I would think that they would put into the set. Espino, the only problem with him being a selection is he just got injured for like a while. He threw 14 innings. His strikeout numbers were crazy. He had 35 strikeouts in 14 innings or something like that. Um, he has insane fastball, insane changeup, and same thing like we said with the organizational stuff earlier. You love pitchers coming from Cleveland. Like like give me all the pitchers coming from Cleveland that I can get. Like they'll all be at least serviceable. Um, so he's one for them. Then for the Dodgers, Bobby Miller. He was the Futures Game representative. He's a right-handed pitcher. Good velocity. Also, same thing. This is becoming a consistent trend with righties. Good changeup and also good slider. Diego Cartaya is a catcher who was also invited to the Futures Game. And if they wanted to take a young prospect in the set, Candy could pick Cartaya. He has good potential, and he's a top three prospect in the Dodgers organization. I just think they could wait a year, have Bobby Miller in this set, and take Cartaya in next year's set. So that's the reasoning for my not picking him. I would have picked him, but both are excellent prospects. And like we said, like to get some pitchers into the set. Um, Speaking of pitchers in the set, for the Twins, Simeon Wood Richardson, right-handed pitcher. He came over in the Barrios trade with the Blue Jays. He's another guy, good velocity. He was not the Futures Game representative for the Twins. The Twins Futures Game representative Wallner was traded, and I don't remember off the top of my head to who. He hit a homer in the Futures Game. He's like 6'6". He's huge. Um, but he got traded. He was their representative. And so with no representatives, Simeon Woods Richardson is a pretty good call. There's really no other options, to be honest with you, as far as who they could take. Um, then next in tier three with the Phillies, Andrew Painter, right-handed pitcher. They really like him. He's one of those. There's some cases when you see prospects rise in rankings and stuff like that a bunch. You'll hear reports of what certain teams think of guys, and Painter is one of those guys. He's one of those guys where in every trade he's unavailable. Um, Spring training they want to push him. Uh, they're trying to give him more than he can handle as far as competition level. So they've done a good job pushing him through the system. He was not a Futures Game invitee. From the Phillies, there really weren't any of substance. The only one was Eric Miller, and I can't put him in this set because I was pulling Bowman Chromes, and one of my first Bowman Chromes was Eric Miller, and I hated him. So I can't put him in the set. I'm sorry, Eric, if you're watching this. If you're watching this, Eric, I'm sorry. But so Eric Miller is not my representative. It is going to be Andrew Painter, who I think has crazy upside, and he's a great arm for the Phillies. Then the last two for the Giants and the Rays, both of them were the Futures Game invitees, uh, and both are and both had fantastic seasons in the minor leagues. One, first for the Giants is Kyle Harrison. He's a left-handed pitcher, very reliable. Something you don't get a lot now in the minor leagues of are innings eaters. Logan Gilbert was one with the Mariners when he was in the minor leagues. One of these guys where you get they throw 100, 120, 130 innings in the minor leagues. You don't get that often anymore. I think that's a lost art, and I think that's a skill, and he has it. Um, Excellent curveball, good changeup. Um, Not crazy velocity from the left-hand side, but he's a true pitcher, which they really like. Uh, he pitched in the Futures game and didn't perform well. Don't look up the videos. He was going against some meat. But then the representative from the Rays, Curtis Mead. Speaking of meat, Curtis Mead. He's a high riser. He had a big time year this year. Good power numbers. Same thing with a lot of these righty bats. A lot of teams are looking for the same thing. You want opposite field power, you want on base. That's what everyone's kind of looking for. So a lot of these guys who are ranked that high have that. So Mead's the last one in tier three. So tier three is overall pretty solid, but there's a pretty good. All of those guys in the set, there's a pretty big fall off from tier two to tier three.
Okay. All right, so that takes us to tier 4. We've got the last 8 guys on the set here. So we've got Atlanta, the Cubs, Detroit, KC, LA Angels, New York Mets, Oakland, and San Diego. And again, we've got about half of these guys were in the futures game, half of them were not. So let's take it home here. This is the final tier.
Yeah, the last tier, I'm gonna blow through this super quick, just because honestly, a lot of these guys are kind of end of the road selections. Um, so first one for the Braves, Jared Schuster reminds me a lot of Cole Irvin for the A's. Depending on how you view Cole Irvin, not the best comparison, but left-handed pitcher, good changeup, decent fastball. He was the Futures Game representative. There's no other Braves because Vance Grissom and every single other one that they have who's highly touted gets called up like 2 years early. So we don't get to have a Michael Harris or a Grissom or any of those guys. So we get Jared Schuster, which is fine. Then next for the Cubs, Pete Crow Armstrong. He's an outfielder. He was a high school draftee. He's been traded a couple times, I think. He's having a good year. He was their minor league hitter of the year. So he's a decent selection. He could be one who surprises, maybe like a JJ Bleday. But he is their Futures Game representative, so that's an easy one. For Detroit, Wilmer Flores, he's their Futures Game representative. Honestly, I'm going to be honest with this one. With him, I really don't know a lot about him. All I know is that he's their Futures Game representative. There aren't really a lot of highly touted prospects in the system besides him. Um, he should be their representative. Kansas City next. There aren't really any Futures Game prospects of note, so I went with Asa Lacy out of Texas A&M, a lefty pitcher. They've had some good success with pitching recently, and there could be some chances for innings. He's overall an older prospect, but still, I think he'll be the selection, or at least he would be a solid choice if they go a pitcher. Another left-handed pitcher for the Angels, I have the selection as Kai Bush. Zach Neto is a high draft pick who they should select next year, but he's far too young. Kai Bush was the Futures Game representative. He's a left-handed pitcher with not great velocity, but changes speeds well. Not overly exciting, but he's one of the better pitchers. For the New York Mets, this is one that I kind of went off script for because they don't really have a lot of prospects that stick out to you because Brett Beatty already debuted and Alvarez was in the set last year. So there's not really anyone to pick at the upper levels. So I'm going to go with Kevin Parada, who they just took in the first round of the 2022 draft. He's a catcher. He has fantastic power. He's a local kid. I think he could have good success there. Super far away, so if he's in the set, be ready to hold for a long time. Um, with the A's, Denzel Clark. Denzel Clark is their futures game invitee. He's kind of off the map, had a decent season, not great. Um, but I wouldn't expect much out of Denzel Clark, to be honest with you. He's probably one of the ones that I'm the least confident in ever really contributing anything. He's not even in their top 10. I honestly don't know where the selection in the futures game came from with him. He's not even in their top 10 prospects on any list, really. So, I mean, long story short, stay away from Denzel Clark if he's in the, if he's in the set. But then the last one, same thing, Padres, because of all their trades, super tough to get a representative. I just picked Kevin Kopps. He was a hype pitcher in college for Arkansas, I think. He was a reliever, then he was a starter, but the velocity and electricity was always crazy. He's not a futures game invitee, didn't have statistically that great of a season. I think it would kind of just be a punt selection for Candy. Just kind of, we don't have a selection. Kevin Kopps could make it to the major leagues in a reliever role. We'll just kick the can to next year's class and see what we can do.
Nice. It's a extensive list, and
Yeah.
I cannot wait to run through it and see your hit rate.
Oh, I know. I
You
can't
know,
wait.
that'll be
Yeah.
that'll be a very fun part of the follow up to this episode. So looking forward to that. Like we said, not exactly sure when this set is going to come out, but have to imagine it's somewhere in November. It's been slated on the roadmap as late fall, so it can't be too far away. And I would imagine that that's something that they want to kind of do not too far away from the hype of the playoffs, but it also could be something that they do push to have something that's worth looking forward to in the off season. So we'll see exactly where it drops. Awesome list. Enjoyed listening to your take on all those, and like I said, looking forward to running back through it all once we have the full set. Let me ask you one parting question here, collector question, before we wrap this up, which is, I think that one of the most intriguing things right now, without having collector score, is all of our perception on what we would prefer to hold. And I don't think that there's any better conversation or any more pure version of that conversation than some of these guys that have uncut diamonds as well as true rookie cards, because we're in this, Candy's dropping into this moment in time where they're starting a baseball card set, and that means that we are never going to have a Mike Trout rookie card. We are never going to have, a lot of these stars of today. We missed the ability to get their rookie cards. Yes, we could do things like the Cal Ripken drop, and that's commemorating his rookie season, but let's be honest, people are never going to look at that truly as a rookie card. But what we have to be excited about are guys like J-Rod and Witt and Adley that do truly have rookie cards. Hopefully they'll have a rookie card badge on their leadoff series. So with your speculation on the future of Candy or just your personal preferences as a collector, would you rather be in and let's here, I'll put it as a simple, looks like J-Rod's 2021 rare has a floor of 800 right now, and his Titan is a little bit below that, although they've been selling for around 800. So would you rather have a 2021 rare J-Rod or Bobby Witt, etc., or would you rather have the Titan, which is going to be probably the true rookie card? What's your opinion there?
I'd probably rather have the rare, but Titan is close. Like if you said Titan versus Epic, I'd say Epic.
Right. But
But
I'm going with the same a
yeah,
similar price point.
right. No, which is what makes the question good. Ah, man. Um, I'd probably still, the thing for me is I just think the uncut diamonds are the true rookie cards. Then there will be ones obviously that guys don't have uncut diamonds and then that's their rookie. But I just think if someone has an uncut diamond, I think that is their true first appearance, true prospect card, true whatever. I would go. I would go rare, especially with J-Rod too, because the blue looks good on it.
Hmm.
I would go like I'd probably go rare over Titan.
Yeah, I'm the same. If the price point is equivalent, give or take, I'm leaning 21. Not only because it's the origin product, but also I think that people are going to follow the whole Bowman concept with their collecting. And so you've got Bowman, pre-rookie season cards are whatever that first Bowman card is what people are after most heavily in most cases. So I agree with
It's
you
an
on
easy
that. That's
parallel.
my call as well.
Yeah, it's an easy parallel to make,
Yeah,
like okay, Bowman Chromes, Uncut Diamond, Tops, lead off, and it's a very easy like comparison to make and explain to people.
definitely.
Um, yeah, and it's the risk that's baked in. I think that's what makes the cards exciting for people and more valuable is when you have this card, this when someone bought J-Rod's card, he could end up being nothing. Like
Right.
there's risk in all of these, and I think that's what makes those cards more valuable than the All-Stars. By the All-Stars and the Titans, you knew what J-Rod was.
Mm-hmm.
That then it's easy.
Because J
You
Rod
know,
easily could have been Spencer Torkelson. Like
right?
it goes
Exactly.
that way.
There was a time where you $250 either way, you could buy J-Rod or Torkelson.
Hmm.
100%. Like that was a thing. And that's a perfect example. It can go either way just as easily. And I think that's the risk. That's why the Uncut Diamonds, in my opinion, the hits should be worth way more than the safe plays of the All-Stars and the leadoffs and that.
That's a great way to define it. Is that the initial investment is much riskier on an uncut diamonds card because you just don't know yet. So I think that
100%.
that in and of itself is a huge reason for those cards to grow in value or to be more desirable. And I mean, I guess that partially explains why you've got the epics as so much more valuable than say a Titan, etc. So the market is showing that on its own. There's multiple reasons there, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I like it. So, well, this has been fun. I don't, do you have any parting thoughts before we call it here?
No, it's been fun being on. I like talking with you. And no, I guess I would say as one cautionary tale to the next set, I wouldn't expect like whoever the top people are, I wouldn't expect J Rod and Adley and Bobby Witt. What we saw with this set was a freak generational rookie class. So I would say for people, temper expectations, but get excited about it. That's what I'd say.
Absolutely. Love that. Definitely was a crazy initial set. We got lucky with it, but looking forward to what the next set looks like. Looking forward to seeing the art. Looking forward to finding out more details. But with that, my name is Nate. That's Shadsman. This has been an Uncut Corner special of Talking Candy. Appreciate everyone being here, and we'll see you in the next one.